Hello, mortals and misery enthusiasts. My name is TV's Guide, and welcome to a quick look at Mortal Shell. This is an independent game, a Souls-like game, as you can tell from looking at it, that's out right now with an open beta demo on the Epic Game Store. And if all you want is a recommendation, yes or no, whether or not you should check this out, my recommendation is yes, this is a good take on the Souls formula. It's interesting, it's fun. And it's brutally difficult. Now, if you don't like Souls games, especially if you don't like Dark Souls games, you will hate the hell out of this. Like, there's nothing for you here, because this game, like, as you can tell from looking at it, it's very upfront about wanting to be Dark Souls. From its aesthetic to its gameplay to, like, every part of it, it wants to be like Dark Souls. And so in that respect, it's not a particularly original game in the sense, like, it's not like it's trying to redefine the Souls-like formula. It's trying to, not perfect it perhaps, but it's trying to do it in an interesting way, rather. And I think it succeeds at that by adding a few novel gameplay elements to it. First of all, as the title of the game indicates, Mortal Shell, the game's primary gimmick is based around the idea of occupying different shells. Now, shells are characters that you find, corpses essentially, that you find as you go through the game, and that thing right there, that ghoul-like corpse that just got knocked out of the night there, that's me. That's your actual player character. And that player character can find these corpses lying around and occupy them and then become those characters, using them as shells to walk around in. It's essentially, it's almost like a mecha version of Dark Souls, except not at all in any way, shape, or form. And each of the corpses that you can inhabit, each of the shells that you can use, essentially embodies a different character class. So the knight character that I'm in right now is one of the more defensive characters. He's got a lot of upgrades that make him more able to take punishment of various kinds and more able to resist damage. There's a different character that you'll see me play, which is more of a thief-like character who's very fast, who's very agile, but who also has a lot less health, but has a lot more stamina, so they can do a lot more dodging, and they can do a lot more attacking. Also, they can be more aggressive in a lot of situations, which can be very powerful. I've found 2 shells. The game promises that there'll be like at least a handful more, and all of them have individual upgrade trees. So there's no gear in this game. You don't equip different armor, you don't equip different shields, you don't find swords lying around. You find weapons lying around, but the two-handed sword that I'm using right now, for example, is the basic starting weapon. Later on, you'll find a hammer and chisel weapon, which is sort of a dual-wielding, faster thing going on. But it's a very small number of weapons that you have. And there you can see I died. It's a very small number of weapons, as far as I can tell, that you'll be able to wield. Certainly in the demo, I've only found 2 different sets of weapons. And you can upgrade each weapon individually, but it's not like you can find 10 different swords and pick between them. So, much like in Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, which this game also takes some liberal inspiration from, I think, there's a 2-life system. Like, the first time you get knocked out of your shell, you're fine. You can run around as the wight, and so long as you don't get hit by anything, you can get back into your shell, you'll recover full health, and you'll be right back in the action. If you get knocked out of your shell a second time, that's death. And, of course, if you get hit while you're in your wight form, that's death as well. So you have this sort of grace moment. I haven't found a way to recharge the ability to jump back into your shell. Like, I haven't found a way to recharge that extra life, except to rest at a bonfire, which is not a bonfire, we'll get to that. And, like, basically reset all the enemies of the area. But I'm sure there's going to be some item that can do that. There's also no Estus Flask, or at least there's no Estus Flask equivalent. What you do get is around the environment there will be little healing items just like kind of scattered about that respawn. In this area, it's mushrooms. Mushrooms that will heal you slowly over time, regenerate your health, and they will allow you to survive. That's the only healing you get. There's no Estus Flask. There's nothing like the life gems in Dark Souls 2 that you can just kind of purchase from a vendor. In fact, I haven't found any vendors yet. So there's that. Like, so the game is very intent on you being aggressive for a few reasons. The thing you saw me do to those 2 big guys right there was a parry, obviously. But there's 2 parries in this game. One of the parries is the one you just saw. That's the riposte parry. And that's the one, like, you have this little talisman, the orange glowing thing on my hip, that you pull out, and you hold it up, and you get a little glow, and it has a really pretty generous window, frankly, for working. And enemies, if they hit you in that parry window, they get staggered. You can do a critical hit to them in return, and that critical hit will also heal some of your damage, which is very useful. But you can only use that parry as long as you have resolve, which is a kind of stamina mechanic. You can see there's a little orange bar on top of my health bar right now. That's my resolve, and so long as I have a full bar of resolve, I can parry, but if I don't, I can't, and the only way to get more resolve is to attack enemies until a bar fills up the whole way. So the game encourages you in that way. You have a parry, but you can only use it if you also spend a good amount of time being aggressive in between parries. Which makes for an interesting push and pull, and it makes it really annoying when you die because you lose all of your resolve, and then you kind of have to go and regenerate it again before you can fight, like, at full efficiency. The lady we're talking to here, though, that's our bonfire. Essentially, she's like the Emerald Herald in Dark Souls 2, as it were. She offers up lore and little tidbits, and she's also how you set your spawn point and how you upgrade your character. And the first thing you do with each character is you spend some tar, which is the soul's resource in this game, in order to discover the shell's name. And every time you unlock an ability in this ability wheel, you get this, a bit of voice-acted lore telling you some stuff about, oh, who is this character, and what was their story, what's their mindset, and things along those lines. And so if you want to unlock like a character's full story, obviously you have to go through the thing. Now here I'm occupying a second shell. This is Thiel, who is the thief-like character I was talking about. He has a much, much, much higher stamina bar, so you can tell this is my first time playing as him, so I'm about to get my ass handed to me. And he attacks a lot faster than the knight does, but he also goes down a lot easier. His dodge is also different. The knight has a dodge that blocks damage, like he briefly blocks damage as he dodges. The thief has this shadow dodge thing where he kind of dives out of danger, but I get locked in a corner right there and accidentally activate a menu, and then I get my ass completely handed to me. And the game has a few scenarios like that where you get locked in a corner with enemies around you and there's literally no way to escape. Like, you can't get a hit in because they're just wailing on you, and then you can't dodge out of it either because you can't get past them, which is, I found, slightly annoying. But, what was the other thing? Oh, right, I wanted to talk about the second parry system. The first parry system was the one you saw that requires resolve to use. Every character that I've played so far, both of the characters I've played so far, both of the shells have different amounts of resolve. The knight has a lot more resolve than the thief does. He only has 2 bars, and the knight has like 4 that he can charge up. But there's a second parry system as well, which is hardening. And hardening is like L2, and that's something you can use at any time. Like, if you're in the middle of an attack, you can use it. If you're moving, if you're getting hit, you can use it. And it will allow you to block 1 hit from an enemy. Exactly 1 hit. You turn into stone briefly, and then an enemy hits you, and then they get staggered back, and you get to avoid the damage. It's kind of a get-it-out-of-jail-free card. Like, it's a panic button that you can press if, like, holy shit, I've been caught in the combo. I need to get out of this right now. That's the button that you press. Remembering to do that, though, I have found really difficult. It's going to be one of the more important skills, but that is on a cooldown. When you use it, as I did right there, I used it to block an otherwise unblockable attack from that little vampire thing right there. That attack specifically. When you use it, it goes on cooldown, and you can't use it again for a little while. And I think it gets charged up faster if you take damage or something along those lines. And there's a few other mechanics and upgrades you can get, like that allow you to recharge it faster, or use it more often, or get a damage boost after every time you use it to block an attack. So that's like, that's the secondary parry system of the game. Which makes for, like, the game encourages you in that way to be aggressive, because you have this panic button that you can press if, like, oh god, the enemy's winding up for an attack and I'm in the middle of trying to do an attack animation. You can sometimes use that to get out of jail free. Which makes for an interesting combat system. One thing I found kind of annoying is that, at least in the early stages of the game here, almost all the time you are occupying these tiny little hallways and corridors, and they do not play well with the camera at all. The lock-on is pretty good. Like, the lock-on manages to keep enemies in vision pretty consistently, even in tight corridors, but anytime you change your lock-on from one enemy to the next one, like, the camera can just kind of go berserk and completely disorient you, and it's kind of bad sometimes. Which is, again, it's a beta game. I'm kind of okay with it. And there you saw one of the more interesting enemies. That's a guy who has a lot of swords stuck in him. When he gets low health, he will tear off his own head and die, but not before he throws the head at you. And if you get hit by the head, you get poisoned pretty badly, like it does kind of a lot of damage over time, and he leaves behind a poison cloud over his corpse that does a lot of damage over time. The thing you're supposed to do with him, as I figured out eventually, is you're supposed to poke at him at first. Like, you're supposed to poke at him until his health gets low, but not so low that he actually starts tearing his head off and throwing it at you. And then once he's low enough to be like within, you can finish him off in a single combo, then you charge at him and then you kill him before he can throw his head at you and leave a poison cloud behind. Because that poison cloud is really freaking annoying, and that head is actually kind of difficult to dodge. And all the enemies I've encountered so far in the game are kind of like that. Like, they all have little patterns and methods that you can use to figure out how to beat them most efficiently. Here, for example, I make the mistake of using my parry way too early, which allows him to just tear his own head off and throw it at me without me getting any of the benefits. But these little vampire dudes here, these little ghouls or whatever the hell they are really aggressive. Like, they like to jump on you, they like to grab a hold of you, they like to bite into you, they can do a ton of damage over a really short amount of time. The solution with them is to be really, really aggressive with them. Like, just charge at them, get them up close, lock them down, and kill them, because you can almost always kill them in a single combo. And that's very much what the combat feels like. It's each enemy is this little puzzle of like, okay, how do I engage with them most efficiently? How do I figure out how to beat them most effectively? And that'll usually take you like at least a few deaths to figure out. There's one enemy in this area that I haven't figured out yet, even after an hour, who is just relentless. Like, they're just relentlessly aggressive, and if they hit you with anything, you lose like 90% of your health, which is very annoying. It also has the Souls approach to lore, which is to say you run around, like, you start the game, no context for absolutely anything that's happening. Like, there's no intro cinematic, there's no nothing. You just kind of appear out of a pool of water, and then you have to run along and find a shell to inhabit. No lore description of any kind. You pick up items as you go along, and you read their item descriptions. You find stuff written in the environment, and like, you find a single cryptic NPC I've found so far, who's willing to give you little tidbits and stuff. Other than that, the lore you get is from upgrading your character and from using the items. This is a very interesting little feature in terms of how this game delivers its lore. Each item you pick up has a familiarity rating. Like each usable item. And the more you use the item, the more familiar you become with it, the more you know about its effects, the more you know about the lore and the story behind it. So the first time you pick an item up, you get a little tiny bit of lore, but not very much context. Then you use the item a few times, and you get a little bit more knowledge, and you get to know what the thing does. The cool part about that is that there's a lot of discovery. Like, there's a lot of, oh, what the hell is this thing? Only one way to find out, which encourages you to use your items, which you should, because they're actually really useful and powerful. Hoarding items in this game feels like it's probably a very bad move, especially since a lot of items regenerate in the environment. So you can pick them up multiple times. But the downside is that sometimes you'll find a mushroom and go, oh, what does this mushroom do? And you eat it, and then you get poisoned, and that sucks. That's generally a bad time. Oof. And also, it has the Dark Souls style enemy placement, which is enemies that are hidden around corners, that ambush you, which is a little bit annoying, but again, it's the thing of, it assumes you're going to die at least a few times, so that you run through the environment again, and you know where all the enemies are, and then you can plan for them, that kind of thing. And yeah, in general, I think this game is really promising. The developers have said that it's obviously a Souls-like, but they want to do something different than Dark Souls. They want to have a different scale. This is an indie game. It's not a FromSoft game. So it's working on a much smaller and more intimate world, a much smaller and more intimate story, at least according to what the developers are saying, which I appreciate. Like, I like the idea of that being just a relatively short, straightforward game rather than the sprawling epic of a Dark Souls. And it is also, like, in terms of its gameplay feel, and there I got hit in the face with a poison head, and that's gonna poison me almost to death. And here, I've picked up a second weapon. The first new weapon I found in the game, which is this hammer and chisel thing, which attacks really fast and is really good at pressuring enemies, but it also costs a ton of stamina. So I think it only really works on the thief, and it doesn't do a great job of staggering enemies necessarily, as you can see with that guy. So yeah, I didn't really use that hammer and chisel for too long, but it's there if you want to use it. They've said they wanted a smaller and more intimate experience, and that's really what the game feels like. And it's consequently, it also feels a lot more cryptic. Like, I don't even know, outside of the world is called Fallgrim. And that's kind of all I know about the world building. I don't know why there are shells. I don't know why I exist in the world. I don't have any context for anything that happens, and my worry is that it's going to be difficult to invest. Because like in Dark Souls 1, you have the framing device of, oh, this is like the mythical founding of the world, you need to go and link the flame in order to restore the world to balance. Like, you have an idea of what you're doing and why. In Dark Souls 2, it's like, oh, you're inflicted with this terrible curse, you need to go to Drang Lake to fix it, so you have a mission, you have some clue about why the hell you're doing things. So far in Mortal Shell, I have found absolutely no reason to care about anything that's happening in there, except curiosity. Like, oh, hey, I want to see what happens next. Which may or may not be enough for you. Like, if you want Dark Souls-style lore, I don't think you're really going to get it here, at least not in the demo. It certainly seems like it wants to make you wait longer than that to figure out, like, the overarching ideas of what the game is about. It keeps you very, very, very in the dark, especially early on, which your mileage may vary on. I feel a little lukewarm about it. Like, I'd like to have some clue of, like, okay, I'm going through all this punishment. I'm dying over and over and over again, and I've died like 15, 20 times already. I'd like to know that I'm doing it for some kind of reason beyond just, oh, hey, here's a world, go explore it if you want to, I guess. I'm looking for a Lord Gwyn, I'm looking for a Vendrick, like some kind of goal for my character to be working towards, which maybe the game introduces that later on, who knows. Now in terms of, oh, by the way, in terms of souls, so the game has two resources. One of them is called Tar, and that's basically like your souls from Dark Souls. They drop from all the enemies, they're the primary thing that you use to upgrade your character, but there's also a secondary resource, which is called Insights, and you need both of them to upgrade your character's abilities. Now, souls, of course, drop when you die. The Tar, you lose all of that when you die, but the Insights stay with you. You can't lose those. So there's an interesting sort of give and take, and this is the enemy I haven't really figured out the pattern of yet. They're really relentless and bloody difficult to deal with. So there's an interesting give and take of where, like, you can keep your insights even if you die, but your insights are also tied to whatever shell picked them up. So if I pick up 3 insights with the thief here, then those insights can't be used to upgrade my knight. And but vice versa, if I pick up Tar, souls, those can be used to upgrade any of my characters. So there's this interesting sort of push and pull mechanic between insights and souls, and like if you want to upgrade a character, you have to play as that character, basically. You can't just play as the knight and then use those resources to upgrade the thief. You have to play as the thief and pick up insights in order to progress as that particular character. And there we go, respawning back at the not Emerald Herald. She offers you the ability to sip of the divine tar, which, disappointingly, is not a euphemism for anything. It's just that I think tar is supposed to be short for nectar, but the fact that they call it tar really kind of embodies the grimdark atmosphere that the game is going for, which I found to be really oppressive. And again, your mileage may vary. Dark Souls, for me, has the distinction of it has these moments of beauty and levity, like with grand vistas and beautiful sights, especially in Drang Lake, but also in Lordran, like when you go to Enolondo for the first time, for example, where things do look aesthetically beautiful. This game is much uglier. And I don't mean that in terms of like the graphics or the art direction. Everything looks fantastic, but everything is also dark and dour and wet and damp and decrepit and decayed, and there's just skulls and grime absolutely everywhere. Again, I've only been in 2 areas of the game. Maybe this changes later on, but this game is like not interested in the same way that Dark Souls is in being pretty, in presenting a beautiful world. This is all death and decay and dudes walking around with swords stuck through them all the time for unspecified reasons and tearing their own heads off and poisoning me with them, which is extremely annoying. But yeah, I think I've said what I needed to say. Mortal Shell, really interesting independent Souls-like game. Fully recommend that you try and check it out. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this brief ramble about my early hour and a half playing Mortal Shell. This is a game I'm going to keep my eye on, and it might be the subject for some streaming, playing that later on down the line. But if you've enjoyed this quick look at Mortal Shell, feel free to hit the like, comment, and or subscribe buttons down below. And, you know, besides encouraging me to make more Mortal Shell content, that would also encourage the YouTube algorithm to show my videos to other people. That's why YouTubers are also always asking for likes, comments, and subscribes, because algorithm something, and then your video gets to be shown to people, which we like. We want audiences to see our things. Outside of that, if you want to support this channel directly, I have a Patreon, a merchandise store, and a tip jar. You can use them if you want to, and if you don't want to, that's completely okay. At the end of my videos, though, I try to encourage people to, generally speaking, support the content that they enjoy directly with whatever they can, whenever they can. Especially for smaller and niche content creators, direct support from their audience makes a huge amount of difference for them. That $1 donation, that little bit of pocket change, can be literally the same as thousands of views on a video. So if there's online content that you enjoy, please consider supporting it directly with anything you can, whenever you can. Anyway, before I end the video, I'm going to do another couple of bits of self-promotion. First of all, I have a series on this channel called The Boss Designs of, and I've gone through the boss designs of Dark Souls 1, and we're currently working our way through the boss designs of Dark Souls 2, where I use the character designs, the lore, the story, the context of each boss in those games as a lens through which to try and interpret the meanings and the themes at the heart of those games. So if you're interested in that, go check that out. And also I have a second channel where I do Let's Plays and most of my streaming. You can head on over there and subscribe and like and comment on that one if you want to as well. Anyway, at the end of this video, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to wash your hands and have solidarity with those who are fighting to make the world a better place.